Well, thank you. And healthcare is very important, particularly so with global pandemics taking us all to task at the moment. So we need all the help we can get.
You don't say. I haven't noticed. Well, today joining you, and I'm just inviting everyone to the stage. We've got Tom Buntz, Chief of Security at Virtua Health, Michael Archuleta, CIO at Mount San Rafael Hospital, and Esmond Kane, CISO at Steward Health. Let me just make sure I've got everybody. We've got Tom, and I think we've got Michael. I think they just start their videos, and it's really good to see this blend. So we've got people on both sides of the house, physical and digital. Richard, what are you going to talk to us about in your panel?
So, one of the big concerns at the moment around healthcare security is doing more with less, right? We've got an evolving, constantly changing, rapidly changing environment in healthcare with increased digitalization, interoperability, and an exponential growth in what I call healthcare IoT, right? HIOT, an expansion of medical devices to replace nursing staff or to supplement nursing staff, and a general growth in the level of technology that we use to diagnose, manage, monitor patients. All of this is putting immense pressure on security teams to keep patients safe, whether it's a loss of PHI, PII as a result of a theft, whether it's an extortion attack, and we've seen a number of ransomware attacks against healthcare since COVID began, or whether it's the theft of clinical research and intellectual property, as we've seen from from nation states that have been out there trying to steal cures for COVID, right? So they can take their product to market before the established pharmaceuticals can.
Oh, very, 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 very important. And just to double check, we've got Mike Archuleta on. Are you on the audio, not the video? Are you there, Mike?
Hey, how are you? Again, yes, it's Michael Archuleta, and I am on audio.
Okay, fantastic. Well, I will let Richard have the floor and ask the questions. We're all good to go.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for the introduction there, Fallon. So I'm Richard Staynings. I'm Chief Security Strategist with Cylera. We're based in Manhattan. We solve the healthcare IoT security monitoring and management problem for a large number of hospitals and medical providers around the world. And when I'm not doing that, I'm also heavily involved in HIMSS, CHIME, AHIS, and a number of other healthcare organizations. And in my spare time, I manage to find time to participate in educational, illuminating panels and conferences, as Fallon has put on here today, and also managed to teach some postgraduate cybersecurity courses. With that, I'd like to go around my panel and allow them a couple of minutes to talk about themselves and where they come from and what they do and what keeps them up at night. So, Tom, you're the first on my list. Why don't you kick us off?
Thank you, Richard. My name is Tom Buntz. I'm Chief of Security at Virtua Hospital in Marlton, New Jersey. I've been with Virtua Health now for 12 years. I started as a security officer per diem on the weekends, and from my time with Virtua, I've gone to school. I'm a senior at Rutgers right now with a major in criminal justice and sociology. Prior to my time with Virtua, I was a member of the United States Air Force. I was security forces for 4 years at Edwards Air Force Base in California. I can tell you that over the past 6 months, the things that have really kept me up at night was really thinking about my team and how all of the challenges that we face on a day-to-day basis anyway has now been enhanced from the COVID-19 response, because the people who are now coming into our facilities are sicker than previously. They are requiring more hands-on care, one-on-one care for nursing. They're needing a lot more technological interventions, whether it's somebody who needs to be on a vent or needs ICU space. Our infection control team has been heavily hit by this. So really, how do we continue to provide the services that we normally provide and then they're now enhanced because of the COVID-19 response.
Cool. Thank you, Tom. Esmond, tell us a little bit about your you and your life in today's COVID environment.
Thank you, Richard. So my name is Esmond Kane. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer for Steward Healthcare. Steward Healthcare is a 9-state US-based healthcare delivery organization. We have about 35 hospitals. And what's keeping me up at night is meeting the needs of those hospitals. We've had an exponential increase in demand, as much as some of those hospital systems in the East, in Massachusetts and such, have weathered the storm. Some of our other systems, in particular in Florida and Texas, are currently undergoing that same kind of spike and hotspot that we saw up here some months ago. So it's really meeting that need. It's perseverance, it's stamina, it's keeping the lights on, while we've also had a 300 to 400% increase in attacks by our adversaries. So it really comes down to perseverance. It really comes down to keeping an eye on the goals and making sure that when you're taking these expedited measures to meet that increase in threat and risk, that you're not actually magnifying some of your internal problems. Thank you.
Great, thanks Esmond. Mike, if you're there, introduce yourself and say a few words, please.
Hey, thank you, Richard. Hi, my name is Michael Archuleta. I am the Chief Information Officer with Bridge Care Health Network, Mount San Rafael Hospital. So we are basically 5 facilities here in Southern Colorado. And I've always been focused on how do we basically continue to move forward with the acceleration of digital transformation. And that's really been one of my key elements moving forward, is utilizing technology as an actual tool to improve outcomes, especially improve outcomes in the healthcare industry, which is a much needed industry when it comes to a focus on digital transformation and the utilization of technology. I think what really keeps me up at night, just like everyone else, is the attacks of opportunity. That has been a major problem. I think during COVID has been one of those items on, like I always state, is your home in order? A lot of organizations were having problems and basically implementing strong telehealth initiatives, strong remote access initiatives. And I mean, there's been a lot of relaxed items, and that's one word I really hate. And I think we need to continue to basically move forward and continue to basically put IT, digital transformation, as a core component to the organizational strategy, which again will take us to a much better place moving forward. So this industry needs a massive change, and COVID-19 may have just saved this US healthcare industry moving forward, especially when we look at the acceleration of digital transformation.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I mean, the whole delivery paradigm has changed, right, since the end of February. Patients don't want to go and sit around a doctor's office to see their general practitioner. They want, they want to be able to have a video consult and to be able to explain confidential information over an encrypted video link with their care team, right? And we have all had to adjust very, very quickly to the acceleration of this digitalization, digital transformation of the industry. And I think there's, it's putting pressure on us to find the right skill sets, the right resources, the right capabilities, technology tools, people and process to keep healthcare safe. So Tom, for my first question, I want to ask you around the resourcing, at your institution down there in southern New Jersey, Virtua Health. How are you coping with attracting and retaining top security talent that you need for this new compute paradigm, given the fact that things have changed quite significantly over the past few years?
Thanks, Richard. So I think one of the things that we were able to do really well pre-COVID was try to look at the market and figure out how do we attract the best people to our positions. At Virtua, we do a couple of incentive programs, things like tuition assistance. We try to read market analysis and figure out if our starting rates and our promotional rates work aligned with what our peers are doing at other places. In 2019, Virtua stepped up and said no employee would make less than $15.15 an hour. And these are all just little things that I think really helped us stay competitive in a market that is now saturated for security talent. where somebody can almost write their own ticket if they have a couple years of security under their belt with some education. They can pick their job right now. It's the candidates market, in my opinion, that they can go and find the job that suits them best. So we have to keep our positions attractive for these guys. So competitive rates, education opportunities, and as many amenities as possible. So it's something that I don't think you will solve with just, okay, we're going to just do it this way. I think you have to constantly keep reevaluating every year to 2 years to make sure that you are competitive and read your market. So if you notice that you're losing people, where are you losing them to if you get a chance to exit interview? Are you losing them to law enforcement jobs, or are you losing them to your competitors in the healthcare market? I think that's something that we have to continue to do.
Yeah, and I would say the problem of staff retention, certainly top quality security staff retention, is particularly acute in the Tri State area. I mean, I know from trying to attract and retain staff in New York that it's almost impossible. You're competing against Wall Street and a lot of very, very well funded New York organizations, and people are quite happy to jump on the train from New Jersey and come into the city, or to work for a New York company that's willing to double their salary essentially. And of course today that means working from home, so that's even better. But how do you get the top, the specialist talent? Are you able to secure people with with cyber threat intelligence skills or digital forensic capabilities, or and I don't know too much about Virtua Health, but are you able to run a 24/7 SOC, for example? And if not, are these capabilities that perhaps might be best outsourced to an MSSP?
And I think it's dual. I think the internal talent that we have combined with someone in a vendor role really makes sure that we are competitive with what's out there, and keeps in mind that what we're looking for as an organization is always front and center. So I think it's twofold. I think you have to have the right people inside, and I think we have great people inside. And then also, when you pair yourself with organizations outside who are looking at the market, who know what's going on, who are seeing the trends and can advise you to make the best choices, I think it has to be twofold. Right.
So some kind of partnership combined with decent man management capabilities in order to keep your staff around. Thanks for sharing that, Tom. Esmond, so are we, you run multiple hospitals all over the country here. In terms of the skills gap, bodies are one thing, but a sea of generalists, is that really what we need given the transformation of healthcare, given the digitalization, the growth of HIOT, for example?
From my perspective, Richard, I'm a big believer in continual recruiting. You need to know who's on the marketplace, and you need to know what skills that they can bring to the table. But there's a set of core skills that you really can't negotiate on. Those are a lot of those soft skills around communication, interpretation, delivery, accountability, ownership. These are the nascent leaders that you build programs around. So I do agree that generalists can self-destruct to a certain extent. They will take too much ownership. They will burn out. You'll end up with a fatigue issue. But they have a play. It really depends. The nature of this organization is changing so rapidly. Just in the last 5 months, as we heard from both yourself and Michael, COVID has transformed healthcare rapidly. And 4 or 5 months ago, you may not have needed so much experience around things like VPN, posture assessment, conditional access, endpoint hygiene, or hardening at the endpoint, whereas you do now. So you need those soft skills that somebody will be accountable, step up, take ownership, learn, right? But you also, on the other hand, need a certain core skill set where you have dedicated personnel working in specific capacities. The way I influence my teams is I don't want them to niche themselves or kind of postpone some sort of debt by which the skills they acquire don't have any longevity. It's really that focus on learning. It's being adaptable, flexible, knowing how to communicate. Those are the skills I focus on as a general level of baseline accomplishment. Beyond that level, the hard skills, I will train. I use that as a retention mechanism. If I can send you to a class, that's excellent. Otherwise, perhaps I will expose you to a lab or on-the-job training. That's more for the development. But I also broaden across my team and expose these training opportunities to as broad an audience as possible. You will never know when you need to know something. One of the things that I heard both you and Tom mention there is the turnover, right? You have to understand that healthcare isn't, as you mentioned, going to compensate as well as finance. But by that same measure, if you get that person who's altruistic, who can benefit from the other kinds of programs, the work from home, you know, the medical benefits and such that we can bring to bear, there's other reasons for staying in healthcare. If you're purely monetary or financially or mercenary based, then perhaps I don't want you in my organization. You might be a prima donna. You might create more problems. I describe that sometimes as I try to recruit Watson. I try not to recruit Sherlock. You know, I want somebody that will roll up their sleeves, knuckle down and get the job done. I don't necessarily want someone who's brilliant, but by that same measure, you know, I have to soft pad or white glove to treat. That they will tend to rapidly exit the healthcare information security programs, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a question here that I think is probably pretty pertinent. Normally I put questions at the end, but in this case, Esmond and Tom, or Mike for that matter, I'll open this up. Brian Stone has asked, how do you provide additional compensation once you bring a resource with significant additional skills? And I think that's relevant because, you know, a lot of cyber specialists are demanding, or their market value, should we say, can often be more than the CEO of a small hospital system, right?
I'll start before I hand it over to Tom and Michael. I think Tom had mentioned it. You need to do that competitive market analysis to make sure that your pay rate is equivalent to your region. But by that same measure, now that we've got COVID in play and remote working is now on the table, perhaps it opens up other recruiting grounds. So I do, as I mentioned earlier, go after those candidates. If I'm aware they're in the market, they're interested, they're dissatisfied, maybe I can attract them based on the culture or you know, the other caliber of the staff that they're working with. Or I definitely do add in a lot of things around skilling and upskilling and continual education, as I mentioned earlier. Tom, Michael?
Tom, any additional comments? And you're on mute, Tom.
Love technology. I really agree with Esmond. You know, it doesn't have to be the person who, you know, for me in South Jersey, it doesn't have to be the person in Philadelphia or the person in North Jersey or New York now. Are there resources in the Midwest or on the West Coast or even abroad where I now have a brand new pool of applicants and candidates that you can reach out to and be competitive with? I think we should not sell ourselves short thinking that we're not competitive with other people.
Right. So other incentives other than, you know, monetary bribes to come and work for the organization. So Mike, you're a CIO. You're the big man over IT and security at Mount San Rafael. How do you deal with this? How do you attract people to, you know, to Bridge Care? How do you retain them? What incentives do you use?
Yeah, absolutely, Richard. So in my opinion, most organizations really don't have a workforce strategy when it comes to security. I think that becomes an actual major problem. And as everyone touched, you know, culture is such a big issue as well. You know, the healthcare industry has been one of those industries, as I always say, is, you know, we're really behind the curve when it comes to digital transformation. You know, when we look at the finance industry, when we look at the natural gas industry, I mean, we're several years behind the curve in regards to that. But again, you know, what's really important too is, you know, your overall culture. You know, how mature is your organization's digital culture? When I say that, it's like, well, what does that have to do with cybersecurity? Well, you figure if the culture is not basically built and there's not an understanding of the importance of IT and digitalization within your organization, how do you expect to continue to basically improve on more investments when it comes to cybersecurity initiatives? When it comes to really bringing in top cybersecurity talent, because we know the lack of cybersecurity talent is a systemic issue, and that's basically the bottom line. And it becomes a major problem in finding individuals in regards to that. And then another thing too is, you know, you really get what you pay for in the long run. You know, are you truly willing to basically invest in a strong CISO? Are you truly willing to invest in a strong cybersecurity initiative program? And again, you know, it's really focusing on the maturity of your organization. And I always like to say too is we look at hospitals and clinics. Well, I should say I look at hospitals and clinics as digital companies that happen to deliver healthcare services. We are a digital organization. This is the digital age of healthcare. We need to change that specific concept and really move that around because, you know, as you know, the acceleration of digital transformation is truly here. And that's basically the bottom line. And looking at this overall crisis, this crisis has fully displayed the value of IT and digital transformation. And then when you look at the attacks of opportunity, you know, we're seeing a lot of these attacks of opportunity. We're seeing how cybersecurity needs to be a top priority, a core component to the organizational strategy. That means let's hire cybersecurity professionals. You know, let's bring in top talent into this organization. Let's make sure that we are promoting a digital culture, a digital organization that is considered an actual innovative team. Because again, sometimes IT, your actual security teams, they're considered an actual cost center to the organization. That becomes a massive problem too. And again, it's changing that concept of what is IT? IT is no longer a cost center, but an actual profit center to your organization. Again, focusing on those cultural initiatives, bringing strong, you know, visions into your organization and showing, hey, we're doing some awesome things when it comes to the acceleration of digital transformation. We're focusing on technology. We utilize technology. Our maturity level when it comes to digital culture is at a high peak. We see IT as an actual profit center. So again, you really want to move forward and try to build that overall strong cultural foundation in order to basically be successful when you continue to want to invest in cybersecurity investments and initiatives that are critical to the success of any organization, period.
Yeah, so culture, you know, security culture, I think we all agree on the call today that security culture is really a prerequisite to a successful security program, right? And that needs to permeate down from the CEO and the board of directors or the governance structure, you know, for whatever organization you're in. But, you know, there comes a point where, you know, there are a finite number of security resources. The Cisco security report for the last 5 years has consistently said there's a 12x demand over supply for security, experienced qualified security resources. So, you know, unless you're willing to, you know, pay all your security staff $1 million a year, you know, and give them a portion of dedicated parking space, chances are you're not going to be able to get these people. And then, you know, in that sort of competitive market, they're going to up and move to someone who's willing to pay them $2 million a year. Quite frankly, I'm still waiting for that $1 million a year opportunity. So if anyone's on the call and willing to contact me afterwards, I'm definitely open to offers. Although my boss is on the call, so I ought to be nice to him, I suppose. But I mean, this is a very competitive market space here, right? How do we go about filling the skills gaps that we need, the specialist skills gaps? As I mentioned earlier, is that through, you know, that can't purely be through recruiting. Is that a partnership with different players in the space that can offer automation? And is it a growth of things like artificial intelligence and machine learning to ramp up the technology and tools that are available? Or is it, you know, more soft skills, right? Bringing in a leveraged service model of providers, a managed service provider, a partner, in order to do that. Esmond, I know that you've worked in the past, in your past role, with an MSSP. You know, how did that go? And, you know, how is that from a strategic perspective?
Yeah, so I ran with a managed SOC, kind of a hybrid SOC. I had tier 1 outsourced and tier 2 and 3 on-prem. So at least initially what attracted it to me was to accelerate the program. My issue, as I found as time went on, was they didn't innovate. It was very much of a cookie cutter approach. And, you know, the onus fell upon me as the business leader to manage, you know, not just the contract and the delivery, but also the metrics it didn't end up being something that I would promote in future. It's a great way to jumpstart, but not something that I think has any long-term place in an organization. I found it more successful, further to what we heard from Tom and Michael, and you mentioned, to upskill, to hire from within, to build rather than source. The sourcing eventually created its own gravity, and indeed that entire organization that I outsourced to is in the middle of this slow implosion right now, and I'm not going to name names. But I found it better to look at IT. I found it better. I'm very lucky to have a tremendous amount of universities local to me in Boston to hire grads. I hope to keep them. They tend to turn over pretty quickly. They tend to job shop and they tend to job hop for the first few years. I tend to work very closely with programs around Army vets, cyber warriors and such. I bake into every one of my programs, as I mentioned earlier, a skilling requirement. So my staff are guaranteed 40 hours of CPEs, typically through, a SAN certification, or, even something like O'Reilly or these other kinds of upskilling. And now certification doesn't mean that you're getting the skills necessary to accomplish your job. I also make sure to bake into every acquisition a sufficient amount of training credits so that people are also skilled. And then also, you got to take it around and look at what the people are doing and making sure that there's no single points of failure, that there's sufficient cross-functional training going on, because you never want to silo somebody into a position that may not make the best of their skills. So look at advancement, look at progression, have that kind of coaching discussions.
Yeah. Tom, a few quick words?
I'll say when you're bringing someone into your organization, when you're looking for the person who's the best fit, it's important that they don't see themselves as outsiders, that they're just here for that job. Everyone in Virtua is a member of the Virtua team. So every single one of us is responsible for the best possible patient experience, best customer service story possible. So just because someone works in cybersecurity, or if someone takes care of the trash, every single person has ownership that their responsibility is to make sure that we're providing the best services to the customer. So it's being inclusive to the people that you're bringing into your organizations, to say, you're not just here because you're good with this, or you're not just here because we need this. It's because we want you to be part of our team. That would be my opinion on that.
Yeah, it's establishing that culture of security. And in healthcare, we have a very labor-intensive business by and large, right? If you include everyone involved in direct patient care, everyone involved in back office like billing and what have you, right the way through to the facility staff. And I think, as security leaders, if we can permeate a message to say it's everyone's concern to keep patients safe, to keep our IT systems up and running and free from cyber attack. Don't click on links, right? Don't be spearphished, and take the appropriate measures to protect the institution and everything it stands for. Mike, a few final words here in terms of, I wanted to come back to, comments you made earlier around digitalization, interoperability, HIOT, the 21st century challenges for healthcare, right? And relate that back to, skills and partnerships and expertise. A few final words before we finish up here today.
Yeah, absolutely, Richard. So again, we know that we do have an issue when it comes to cybersecurity attacks, the attacks of opportunity within the healthcare sector. We know that 83% of healthcare systems are running on outdated software and unsupported operating systems. We know that, there's a lot of specific medical devices, that have a high chance of being hacked. I mean, there was a specific percentage that there was 40 million Americans that were affected due to this. These are all problems. And again, what we have really learned, especially with the acceleration of digital transformation during COVID-19, is that IT, digital transformation, cybersecurity initiatives have to be a core component to the organizational strategy, because this is not a technology makeover, but an actual business revolution. And we have to look at it that way. Again, organizations need to see our technology team as innovators and profit drivers, IT can no longer be considered an actual cost center, but a strategic revenue contributor. And we need to start seeing our technology team as your innovation team. And that is such a critical component because, again, we always come to these events and we focus on technology, 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 but we forget that people are our number one aspect. People, process, then technology. Focusing on those initiatives, bringing in a strong culture of understanding of what would happen if a cybersecurity breach basically happens within your organization. Again, we need the culture reamped in the healthcare industry for us to continue to bring in these strong cybersecurity investments, these ways to allow us to automate, utilize artificial intelligence, create a hybrid model that gives us that overall focus, that Hawkeye view within our organization. These are important elements, ladies and gentlemen, and this is such a critical component. Make sure IT is a core component to your organizational strategy.
Yeah, these are certainly interesting times, as Sun Tzu would have said if he were alive today. We're going through a dramatic digital transformation. Technology is just one component of it. So thank you for your comments there, Mike. Thanks also to Tom and to Esmond for your very illuminative insights, and greatly appreciate you joining me here on stage today.
Fantastic. Thank you, Richard, for being such a great moderator. It's great to welcome you back again. Please give Richard and our fantastic panelists a lovely virtual round of applause. I'll start off on screen. Thank you. Thank
you, guys.
It's great. I look forward to welcoming you to another one. You've very kindly moderated so many nice panels, and this is a key feature of the debate. So thank you.
My pleasure.
All right, fantastic. So obviously today we've looked at the MSP of the future. We've looked at the secure MSP of the future and the MSS, and we've gone down a few silos to say, okay, well, what about the world of healthcare, and what should the MSP in healthcare look like? By the way, thank you. We've got some very nice comments in the audience. Chris Ware says IT needs to be seen as a profit center, invest now, pay later. Brian Stoner had some follow-up points about recruitment and retention and training, so that's really good. Esmond Kane also wrote some nice stuff. When you're commenting, please do click all panelists and attendees. Otherwise, it's just me and the panelists that get your message, and not everyone else there. And a very, very short shout out. I wanted to say hello to Matthew Porcelli. Welcome to the event. Matthew is part of course, ACIS, and I know that he's joining a very nice African initiative. And I wanted to do a shout out earlier. I know that that's a great initiative. So thanks, Matthew Porcelli. Moving on, I am delighted to invite to the stage Drew Sanford from ConnectWise. Drew is the Director Technology Enablement at ConnectWise, and it's a pleasure to welcome Drew to talk about the evolution of the secure MSP of the future.